After retiring from a distinguished military career, a former army colonel who has Parkinson's has documented a solo road trip he took through Africa to raise awareness of the disease.
Now, Parkinson's is heavily stigmatised in Africa, as it's often thought to be linked to witchcraft, leaving people ostracised by their communities. Here's one of the people Guy met on his travels.
People are saying it's witchcraft, or it's evil, it's spiritual.
Pastors in church say it's witchcraft.
Churches are saying it's witchcraft.
Do they say because you have not been praying hard enough?
Yeah, obviously I'm on area now, so you have to pray. See, we have done something wrong, that's why.
Well, can I say something? I've got the same thing as you. I've done nothing wrong. I don't pray very hard. I've worked hard all my life, and it's not witchcraft.
So see what I really be.
My job on my trip is to tell people who I meet that it's a very ordinary clinical condition, having not enough dopamine, that's all. And one day, with the work of the scientists and of our gods, there will be a cure that is bound to make us better.
Well, Guy is with us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can I ask a question? Because the gentleman there with you had, Parkinson's emanates in so many different ways. He was shaking. That's not how your Parkinson's physicalises, so to speak.
I think we all have our own private versions of Parkinson's. We're very lucky in that respect. But the result is that no single person is the same as anybody else. I don't tend to move at all. In fact, quite the opposite. I've become very static and can't move. And that's the worst thing that happens with me. Occasionally I'll shake and wobble, but normally I just can't move without real effort.
And when your Parkinson's first kind of was being recognised, I think you were in the army.
Yes.
And there were various points, and I think the thing that struck me, I think you were brushing your teeth and one arm kept rising.
My right arm would just rise to this sort of height, and for no reason I'd sort of slap it out of the way and it would sort of re-emerge there. And it was quite bizarre. I couldn't explain it at all. Didn't think about it too hard. And that I think is one of the issues that I should have picked up on. I thought, that's not right.
Would that have made a difference picking it up earlier?
Well, not a huge amount of difference, because I would have ignored it. I would have said, I'm sure it's not really what I think it is, and I would have carried on regardless, because I'm that sort of person, I'm afraid.
When you got given your diagnosis, it was quite a blunt conversation, wasn't it?
Well, there's only so much you could say, I suppose, and the good news and the bad news bit was as simple as that. It's incurable, but the pills do work.
And I also want to make clear that when you were in the army, I think you told your boss, I can't remember the rank of your boss, and you said, I'm going to have to say, and I imagine you must have been quite trepidatious and kind of, oh, this is my career, I'm going to have to tell them I've got Parkinson's. So you told them, and then they just said, OK, crack on. That
was potentially the worst moment, because I thought everything was going to fall apart after that. You know, I still had 10 good working years ahead of me, and I couldn't do it, and I was going to be made redundant and kicked out. But he was brilliant. I rang him up and said, I have a bit of a problem. I've just been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And he said, not a problem. Just come to work, carry on as normal, and we'll cater for you, and we'll see what you can do. And it was as simple as that. And thank goodness for it. And the Army has been a phenomenally good employer until I retired.
Now, we should explain, the images behind us, everyone can see here. Has your van got a name?
Well, I call it the Wagon.
The Wagon, OK. And so you dreamt up this trip to go top and tail of Africa, essentially. What was it you were seeking to achieve?
Well, initially, I was trying to fulfil my lifelong dream to do this. When I was at school, I saw some photographs on the cover of a book of people travelling through Africa. I thought, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And I needed time and money and space and everything. And when I retired, I had all of that. So I was going to do it anyway. And because I couldn't get a proper job with Parkinson's, I had the time and I was the inclination to do it. So it was very much sort of my own needs to be fulfilled. But as I went along, people said, you know, you're doing something a bit different, make a big deal of it. And I've then decided, well, I would draw attention to myself having Parkinson's and what I could achieve, what I could do, so people could see that with Parkinson's, all is not lost. You can still do things you want to if you try hard enough.
Now, clearly, anyone undertaking a journey like that, there are problems along the way, but how much was it compounded by your condition, if at all? What difference did that make?
Well, when I think about it, I blame Parkinson's quite a lot for a lot of the way I behaved and the way I made decisions and the way things went right and wrong, because it affects your thinking process as well as your motive skills. And there are certain things that I know I shouldn't have done, and I should have thought carefully about before doing
What kind of thing?
The way I drove sometimes, the potholes I would hit, you know, I would not react fast enough to them, and that caused damage to the suspension, which I didn't need to do. When I was being recovered, I knew there were things I should have done that I didn't do, which is just not by thinking straight.
And that's linked to what you explained to Naga a moment ago about not reacting to things fastly, just generally being slower.
Just generally being slower, yes.
How frustrating is it? Because I know there was an incident where I think you were trying to screw a plate back on to the van, and you just kept going, and your motor skills weren't good enough to kind of get them in, and you just refused to have any help until eventually you had to.
I'm afraid that's true. I'm a little bit stubborn, and I feel I've got to be able to do things myself because I have to be self-reliant, and I've come to realise that I can't do that anymore, and I do need to rely upon people. And that's been one of the lessons that I've learned, is there's certain things I can't do, and I should ask for help and accept help more readily.
I should say that in the back of the book, I don't think I've ever seen a book with so many thank yous at the back of it. And I'm reading the book, I'm thinking, you learnt a lot along the way, probably about yourself, but also about other people. It struck me there were a lot of people who were very, very kind to you along the way. Were you a little bit cynical or a little bit... did it change your outlook on the world we live in? Because everyone knows it's quite difficult times right now, one way or another. Did it change the way you think?
Not completely, but pretty much so. Nowhere did I go were people not helpful and friendly, and it was extraordinary, and they didn't need to be. I had a number of reasons when things were going right and wrong, and whenever there was a problem, there was always somebody there who I'd never seen before, never met, never heard of, who just came and said, "Can I help you?"
And very obviously, we saw in that clip, you met people with Parkinson's as you travelled, whose circumstances were very, very difficult.
Well, they have all sorts of problems, and the biggest problem is there's this huge stigma attached. Not in every country in Africa, because each country is a bit different. But in some places, it's associated with witchcraft, and because they don't understand the fact there's no cure and there's no cause, it's associated with being cursed and that sort of stuff, and people are abandoned because they think it's contagious. And it's just a question of understanding that it's not contagious, and if we can get that cracked, we can make a big difference to people's lives. Pills and medication are great, but being cared for properly is really what's at the heart of the matter.
It's been lovely meeting you, Guy. Thank you very much. The book is called Running on Empty. I think there's going to be a documentary version of the trip as well,
There is, at the end of the summer.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.